Hello everyone, welcome to the F2 driver lineup predictions for the 2025 season. Today I will be seeing which drivers will leave F2 and go to another series, might be F1, might not be, which drivers switch teams, and which drivers come up from lower Formula series like F3, F4 and Formula Regional. Let's get into it. So first we have some of the drivers that are leaving, and you can see 5 of these drivers right now. We got Juan Manuel Correa. I think he's quite old for Formula 2, and also he hasn't really shown pace, being the only driver yet to score points that isn't a PHM driver, so I can see him getting the boot for a young, up-and-coming hotshot. Similarly, Martins, also quite old, I think he's like 21, 22, which is towards the later stage of an F2 driver, and he's fallen off this year. I can see Alpine maybe keeping him around the F1 team as a reserve driver, similar to what they're doing with Jack Doohan, or maybe sending him to another series like Formula Endurance. Who knows? Maloney, I think he won't get an F1 seat, sadly. I think Theo Pourchaire is first on Sauber's list, but he might get the nod to go over to Japan and race in Super Formula next year, so that could be an interesting option for him. And then Mieta, I think what the plan for him is to get a bit of experience in Europe and then move on to endurance racing for Toyota. I think that's their kind of goal, so I don't see a long-term vision in the sport, especially given his age of like 24, 25 years old. He's on a different path to the rest of these drivers. Then we have Ollie Bearman, the first of my predicted F1 drivers for the 2025 season. I think he'll go to either the Haas or Williams team, depending on how well his teammate Antonelli does as well. I think he just needs to show consistency for the rest of the year and get good results, because he's been off it a little bit, but then that F1 seat has given his Ferrari performance in Jeddah. And then in the next 5 drivers that are leaving, we have Kush Maini, who I think has done a solid job, but he lets age. He's also aging out a bit for an F2 driver and doesn't have any kind of F1 backing him aside from the Alpine team, but they already have Jack Doohan and Victor Martins, who are probably higher up on their list, so I don't really know where he goes. I could see him staying in F2 maybe, but yeah, I don't really see a clear plan for Kush Maini. Similarly with Fittipaldi, I think he's one of those drivers which are 22 years old. He's been here for a few years in F2, and there's no F1 seat for him coming up. He's just kind of making up the numbers while putting in solid performances, but he's stopping these younger drivers, these 17, 18 year olds, from coming up. So I would like to see personally move elsewhere, maybe IndyCar or something. I think the same as Dennis Alger. When he was younger, he was a hotshot, winning everything, but now he's fallen off a bit. I would like to see him go to IndyCar or endurance racing or one of those other series and kind of shine there. Maybe even Formula E would be a good spot for him. Do like a Nick de Vries and go and win that, and maybe in a couple of years after he's proven himself elsewhere, come back to Formula 1. Then we have Richard Verschoor. I think he's one of the older drivers as well, a bit experienced, but I don't see him really adding much value to a Formula 1 team unless he's a pay driver. Get him out for me personally. And then we have Antonelli. I was unsure about keeping him in here for another year, but I think if he does poorly this year, Mercedes won't want to risk him doing poorly another year, so they'll put him straight into an F1 seat and be like, here you go, here's your opportunity, and not risk him plummeting in value. He's also shown that he is actually a really good driver, but he's just had a mediocre start to the year where he's adjusting. But I think compared to his teammate Ollie Bearman, he's probably had the strongest start to the year if you skip the Jeddah race. So hopefully he gets the F1 seat. That means I have 2 spots to fill with him and Bearman leaving Prema. So I thought, let's bring over 2 rookies from F3, and Dino Beganovic and Arvid Lindblad. Both of these drivers are fighting at the front end of F3 this season and are doing great things. So Dino is a Swedish guy. He's currently 20. He's in the Ferrari Racing Academy and also races for Prema in F3, so it kind of matches there. And he's currently 4th in the standings in F3, which is a strong performance given it's a quite competitive field this year. Last season he came 6th in F3, so he's kind of having a little step up, but he shows that he's consistently there in about the top order. He is a little bit on the older side of a driver that was coming to F2, but I think that's fine and not an issue if he's only there for a couple of years. I think Ferrari are also missing that reserve driver because they have Robert Schwartzman and Giovinazzi, but they need a younger driver who's going to fill those boots and kind of be there on a race weekend if Ollie Bearman does get promoted to F1, to step in if needed and be that reserve driver who's there every weekend. Then we have Arvid Lindblad. I think He's a very talented driver. And you can see he's very young at 16, but he's still fighting at the top end. I think he's currently 5th in F3 this season, which is very strong given he's racing in Prema against talented drivers like Bogdanovic. Last season he came 3rd in Italian F4. The season before that he was 17th in F4, Italian F4, but he hadn't raced half the season, so still a strong performance. Red Bull love this guy. I think he's kind of their next up-and-coming driver after the guys like Liam Lawson and Ayuma Iwasa and Hadjar. He is the guy that is going to take that RB Red Bull seat someday. Moving on, with Mieta and Maloney both leaving Rodin, there's now 2 empty seats at that Rodin team. So I've opted for 1 switch and 1 new driver. Here we have Paul Aaron and Christian Mansell. We've all seen this year what Paul Aaron can do, and he's still a good age for an F2 driver at 20 years old. And although no F1 team's picked him up so far, after being dropped from Mercedes last year, I can see someone coming in from maybe a Sauber, maybe a Williams, maybe one of these teams with an open seat coming up, like Aston Martin potentially. Someone needs to pick this guy up because he's talented. I can see him moving from a high-tech team to a Rodin team next year, because Rodin are consistently there and high-tech aren't. So I'd like to see him move to a more consistent team. Christian Mansell, I think he's had an underrated year so far in F3, the 19-year-old Australian. Currently not sponsored by an F1 team, but that's fine, as he can go into that Rodin team, maybe be picked up by like a Red Bull team or a Ferrari team, someone like that who needs a reserve driver to fill a spot. Up next, no changes for the Campos team. Strong start to the season for Marti and a bit of an inconsistent start for Hadjar, but he's still showing that he has loads of pace. I think neither of these drivers will win F2 this year, so won't be excluded from eligibility, but I still think these guys will stay with the team who's given them a good car, which can compete at the top of the order. No changes for the Campos team. Both of these guys are Red Bull drivers and will be looking to kind of prove themselves against each other, and this is a great spot to do it in. Same car, same team, head to head, fight for their F1 seat after Lawson and Iwasa. We can see by their performances that they've kind of had relatively similar series, but I think as Hadjar's a year older, so he's a year ahead of that kind of the curve, so he really needs to dominate his teammate over this year and next year to prove that he deserves the RB seat more than Pepe Marti. Now we have the French ART team, and they're going to keep Zach O'Sullivan, the British Williams driver. He's done good this year, currently 11th in the standings and beating his teammate Victor Martins, who's more experienced, older, and has shown good championship racing in previous series. He's now joined by Gabriel Mini, the Italian F3 driver, who's currently at Prema in F3. But that French connection of the Alpine team, I think they could slide him in there easily at ART, similar to what they did with Jack Doohan and Victor Martins. You can see that Gabriel Mini's performances so far this year and also previous year in F3 are very solid. So O'Sullivan will have his hands full trying to beat his teammate. I think this will be an interesting team combination. Now we have Dams. I think they're going to keep Jack Crawford. I thought about switching him to a team higher up the order, but I thought Iwasa did good stuff in that Dams last year. Crawford's doing good stuff this year. He knows he's the team leader. He'll probably stay in that team and understand he can get the support he needs to do well and get that Aston Martin seat if it comes up if Fernando Alonso leaves. He is joined by Sebastian Montoya, and although he's not having a great season, Red Bull love putting drivers in F2 and loads of them. I think Montoya will join what I think will be a 6 to 7 Red Bull drivers next season, because they seem to be sponsoring all the F3 drivers this year, but only a couple of F2 drivers. So I think that will change this year with Sebastian Montoya coming into that Dams, being a little bit of a pay driver, but also having the opportunity at a young age of 18 to prove himself against an experienced Jack Crawford. Now we have Invicta, and with Marnie leaving, Bortoletto stays. There's no open seat at the McLaren team. McLaren want to keep him in F2 for a little bit more experience, and he probably won't win the season this year, so he'll stay for another year at least to get that experience. And he's up against a new teammate, switching from PHM, it's Taylor Barnard. Now he's been bad start of the season, but that might be the car. So I think give him an opportunity in a top order car or middle top order car in the Invicta and see if he has what it takes. He's not sponsored by anyone, so it might be interesting to see if he can afford to race in an F2 seat towards the top of the order. Bortoletto though, he needs to start fighting at the top. I think this year might not be his year because of the amount of talent that there is in F2 this season. The next season could be the one where a lot of these top end drivers go, and he's next in the pecking order, ready to step up and take the F2 title, and maybe be a replacement at McLaren if Norris or Piastri gets stolen by like a Red Bull or Mercedes, or someone comes in and poaches one of their drivers. He would be a good replacement. Maybe not this year, but the year after. And now we have the MP Motorsport team. And with Hauger leaving to what I think will be IndyCar or Formula E, Colapinto stays and Tim Tramitz from F3 joins him, another Red Bull driver. Now the young German, the 19-year-old, is kind of racing for MP Motorsport in F3, so it would make sense switching him up to the senior team in F2 alongside Colapinto. Also, Red Bull backing doesn't hurt. I'm sure MP will love that bit of cash. He's done well so far in F3, currently 6th, performing way above the rest of his teammates, and he's shown solid performances in Formula Regional in 2023 and 2022. Now Colapinto, I think he's been okay so far. He can definitely step up a little bit more, but I think his pace is there, and he's actually a solid driver. I think he's actually a really good F2 driver, and one of these guys that might stay for a few years, similar to Deruvula and these other guys that have kind of knocked about the teams for a few years and then eventually moved on to elsewhere. VAR need a new driver after Enzo Fittipaldi leaves, and I think road choice Doriane Pin, the 20-year-old French woman currently racing in F1 Academy. She showed in Jeddah that she was by far the best driver there on the weekend, and for some weird reason her team didn't tell her she was on the last lap, so I dropped down the order to like 9th after a pit stop penalty. But she's super fast, and if she keeps herself over the rest of the season, I don't see why she can't skip F3 completely and jump to F2 for the 2025 season. She is joined by Villagomez, who I'm really unsure about keeping. I think he doesn't have what it takes. I think his age profile is really bad at 22 years old. He'll be 23 next year. That's getting on a bit. But it seems to me like he's a pay driver given his performances in previous seasons. So I think VAR will be like, give us some money and we'll keep you around for one more season, and then maybe you can go the year after. Then we have the high-tech team. Now they will keep Cordeal, and similar to Villagomez, I was unsure about this. Cordeal is one of these drivers that just knocks about the teams, is there and thereabouts at the back of the order, maybe might get a few points every weekend. As you can see, he's come 16th, 20th and 17th in the last 3 seasons of F2. A solid F2 driver, but nothing exciting, nothing special. But I think they'll bring that exciting and special with Luke Browning, who's currently leading the F3 season this year, although he's actually older than Cordeal, so he might get a chance, but I don't see him spending more than a season or two in F2 before he gets moved over. So he needs to deliver in his first couple of seasons of F2 to get a chance at an F1 seat, because he's old, guys. He's old. Moving on to the Trident team, and they love a non-sponsored driver in their teams. So I think they'll bring Leonardo Fornaroli up from the F3 team to the F2 team for the 2025 season. He's shown a second in F3, which is outstanding given the team he's in. And I think he will make all the difference at that Trident team for the 2025 season. I think Roman Stanek, alongside him, is a really strong choice. He's shown that he can convert his qualifying 2 strong race wins with that performance in Australia. So keep him around for a couple more years as well. I think this lineup is actually one of the strongest on the grid. In the last team, it's PHM Racing, Josh Dirksen, and I think they'll keep him. He might not have the best performances, and I rated him really low down my order at the start of the season, but he's shown that he can race with these guys. You know, he's not way off it, and he's actually doing better than his teammate, which you can see in one of my other videos. His teammate, I was really unsure about this. I had one spot to fill. I didn't know how to take it. I thought about Nicholas Solov. I thought about Louis Sharp, but I settled on Lawrence Van Hoopen. He's currently 8th in F3, which is very strong. I think PHM might have one strong driver and one kind of driver who they know will bring in the money. So yeah, Lawrence will be my young guy at 18, will be 19 next season, and Dirksen will be my bit more experienced older guy who brings in the money with him. That's it. Thanks for watching. Let me know who you think will make the jump up to F2 this season, what championship they come from, and why they deserve to be there. I'm also going to do an F3 video in the same format, so that might help me fill out my kind of roster, because I might struggle. So please let me know down below who you think should be in F2 or F3 next season. Thanks for watching. Peace.